Hello everyone, if you want to play a summoner on Diablo 4, this skeleton necromancer will help you to kill enemies in nightmare dungeons. You'll see that it's quite efficient and that you can have plenty of fun playing a summoner build. I'll explain everything for that build to work, and if it's not done already, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. I'll start with the skills, and you'll be playing Decrepify in order to debuff enemies and their damage. After you have our summoning spells and the Blight, our core spells. You can also choose to play another one if you want to use, for example, Decompose or Rip, but you'll see in the gameplay that we generate essence with the raised skeleton and that we can use it for Blight to debuff enemies and to proc our K passive. Then you have the corpse tendrils, very useful in order to pack enemies, make them vulnerable and gain critical strike chance. Lastly, the ultimate, the Bone Storm, which will proc our unique ring and also give you plenty of damage and tankiness. For the gear, you'll want to get increased number of skeletons. You can also get some cooldown reduction for the stats and a bit of life, but try to get intelligence too on this helm. For the armor, you want the fact that you'll get a barrier. When Bone Storm hit an enemy, it will help you for the tankiness, and you want summoning skill damage, intelligence for the stats. For the glove, you want increased duration of Bone Storm, critical strike chance and intelligence. And for the pants, damage reduction for your minions, a bit of life, intelligence, and why not some maximum minion life. For the boots, increased number of skeletal mages and also intelligence. For the weapon, you want to have increased damage on a 200 weapon for your skeletons, and for the stats, vulnerable, intelligence, critical strike damage, and so on. Make sure to put on the amulets the increased critical strike chance and try to get intelligence and damage if possible. For the ring, you'll want critical strike chance, vulnerable damage, critical strike damage, and you have several choices for the aspect. You can either go for increased damage when you stand still, increase attack speed for your minions, or even this one which will increase your damage after using Shadow Blight stacking 10 times. Lastly, our unique ring for the physical damage explosion, which will be mainly triggered by our Bone Storm, and in the meantime, when you don't have it, you can just use one of the aspects I mentioned before. For the gems, you'll want rubies for the life and increase critical strike damage to vulnerable enemies, and for the hearts, make sure to first have this one which will trigger corpse, and after you have several choices. If possible, the increased critical strike damage and the stacking of damage before exploding. You can also consider the fact that Decrepify will be an aura, but be careful because we are in melee just when you use the Bone Storm. Otherwise, you should better be at a range distance from your enemies. For the Book of the Dead, you want the Reaper with creating a corpse, for the mages, the additional shot on shadow mages, and for the golem, the fact that you'll have a corpse when it takes 20% of maximum life, and you want the bone in order to taunt your enemies. For the ability, if you play Decompose, make sure to take this one which will increase damage to decompose enemies, and after we'll get our Blight with the fact that it will increase damage to enemies within Blight. You can also put one point here to create a corpse, and we'll get the increase of skeletal warriors here, essence when you use a corpse, and damage after using a corpse. After that you have increased damage to cursed enemies, increased damage to distant enemies, and increased damage for the skeletal mage. You also have of course one point here, and the fact that you can kill enemies when they are below 10% of their life. Then you want the movement speed and both increased damage, so 3 points in them. You have the corpse tendril with vulnerable just here, and we'll have at the bottom very interesting passive, some life and damage for the golem, increase attack speed, increase damage, increase healing for the priest, and lastly the fact that minion cannot lose more than 30% of their life. You have our ultimate just here, and the K passive increasing damage with Shadow Blight. So now for the Paragon, you want to get this glyph in order to increase your damage to crowd control targets, and you'll have our first board, this one with the cult leader node. Then you'll get all the rare nodes, so this one, and this one, and after get this glyph which will increase minion damage and damage reduction. So you want to get these blue nodes especially, and after for this board you don't want to get this passive, but you want to have this glyph in order to increase skeletal mages damage. After that you go at the bottom in order to get this glyph which will increase critical strike damage. If you prefer, you can also go for the vulnerability, and then you have this passive which will increase your damage after consuming corpse. At the right of it you have this one which will increase your shadow damage. Make sure to not take the shadow over time and the shadow damage, and we won't take this legendary node, so you can just go back at the top, and then for the last board you want to have this glyph for the skeletal warriors damage. You also have some crit here, and this board is this legendary node board, but we won't take it. I'll let you enjoy the gameplay. Just keep in mind a few things. You have your ultimate when you see a pack of elites. It will give you a great tankiness and some good damage, especially proccing the unique ring if you have it. Otherwise, just summon your skeletons in order to heal with the priest and to generate essence. Lastly, don't forget to debuff your enemies with the curse and with your core attack. Thanks for watching this video, and as usual, if you have any question, feel free to post in the comments. I'll be happy to answer you.